Production of A Great Day for London, the Royal Tour of 1939, was made possible by the Canadian Millennium Partnership Program, the Royal Canadian Regiment Museum, the Ontario Institute of Audio Recording Technology, Rogers Television, Siva Communications, Hay Stationery Incorporated, and the J.J. Tolman Regional Collection of the University of Western Ontario.
Here is a special bulletin from the Press Radio Bureau. Berlin. The dispute over Czechoslovakia seems to be moving closer to a head. The newspaper which...
No more concessions to Adolf Hitler. That is the understanding which has flashed through the nations of Europe tonight, following the meeting of the British and French government heads. And the further meeting...
Quebec City, May 17th. The two most famous passengers on the Empress of Australia disembark at Wolfe's Cove. For the first time in history, a reigning king and queen step onto Canadian soil. The royal tour has begun. The cry from the citizens of Quebec is Dieu sauve le roi, as King George and Queen Elizabeth are hosted by Mr. Montreal himself, Mayor Camillien Hood. In Ottawa, His Majesty unveils the National War Memorial, while Queen Elizabeth lays the cornerstone of the Supreme Court building. Later, they hold high court in Parliament and give royal assent. In Toronto, the couple arrive at Woodbine Park for the 80th running of the King's Plate. His Majesty picks the winner, a 3-year colt named Archworth. At Vancouver City Hall, pageantry outshines all other Canadian cities. Both monarchs express approval of British Columbia's inviting climate and scenery. For many, a brief glimpse of the speeding train is their only contact with their king and queen. But others enjoy a cherished opportunity to converse with their majesties. The list includes native chiefs in Calgary, veterans of the Great War, and politicians of every rank. On their return to the east, Ontario gives the couple a never-ending cheer that rebounds from Sioux Lookout to Niagara Falls. In Chatham, the royal train overshoots the platform where city officials were waiting to be presented. A crowd of 30,000 swarms the coach, making it impossible for many dignitaries to get through. In the village of Glencoe, residents make the most of a 5-minute stopover while a local pipe band plays some of the Queen's favorite Scottish airs. Before the day is over, their majesties will have seen another 2 million people. On June 7th, the royal couple will visit Niagara Falls and open Canada's first superhighway. But first, they'll visit the namesake of the British capital, London, Ontario.
Well, the big deal of 1939 was the visit of the Majesties, King and Queen. And of course, everybody was all set for it, you know. I ran some advertisements in the Sarnia Observer and the Chatham News, St. Thomas, and so on. And in those ads, I mentioned the fact that when they come to London, the Capitol Theatre is going to be open all night, and they can just come in there and rest because they wouldn't have much of a chance to get a hotel because they were pretty well loaded. The film we were running that night was Revved. It was a story about the overthrow of the monarchy in Mexico.
It is something more than just mere idle curiosity, which will draw thousands of people to the centers of Western Ontario to see the royal couple. It is deep affection for the Crown and a firm belief that British institutions, of which the Crown is the emblem, are the foundations of all our civil liberties and personal freedoms. The London Free Press.
Well, at school we were told that because we were in the British Empire, no matter where we were in the world, if someone attacked us, the British Empire would fight back. And we got this feeling of that we were protected by a family people, that the king and queen were sort of like a family that we were part of. And this differed completely from what you seemed to see when you heard, or rather at that time you heard, of what Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin were like. They were more apt to kill you. So that when the king and queen came, we saw them as father and mother figures.
We got up at 6 like we usually do, made sure that everything we had was clean, bright, slightly oily, as we used to call it, brasses shined, clothing pressed, and proceeded to dress in our scarlet uniform, which was made of a very heavy wool and very uncomfortable. Besides, we'd spent many days trying to get one that fits us because it was not our normal dress rather than royal occasions. And finally, we were on parade at 8, and from there on in, it was inspection followed by inspection until we were perfect. We moved off very proudly to the CN station, which was approximately a 1-hour march, and we arrived there in ample time before the royal entourage arrived. And again, we were inspected to make sure that there was no dust on our shoes or anything was out of order, and we awaited the arrival of the royal entourage.
We waited in the hot sun for 3 hours. My feet ached and my face was scorched, but I was far too consumed with the arrival of the royal couple to notice. You see, I had learned to stand for long periods of time by wiggling my toes, kneecaps, and other non-noticeable parts to keep my circulation going. John Dodd, Royal Canadian Regiment.
The school children from all over Western Ontario were brought into London mainly by the CNR. They operated about 21 special trains from all over the area, bringing the children and their teachers with box lunches, etc.
I was teaching in a public one-room school, SS number 5 Norwich, Oxford County. We had to arrange a train and arrange to get the children to Tillsonburg to take the train, and also we had to have the children tell what time to be ready and have their best clothes. It was a very warm day on June the 7th. I called a former student who lives in Tillsonburg as a retired teacher. He was a principal. And he said the thing he remembered was it was his first train ride, and also he remembered the soldiers. He was quite impressed by the soldiers that lined the streets, and he talked to one of them.
The City Works Department put up snow fences about 3 feet back from the curb all over the city, so that all the children were inside the fences and nobody was standing up in front of them, which gave them a good view, and nobody was in and all their friends were around them.
The city has given permits for 20 private grandstands along the 4-mile route. Private citizens have been asking and obtaining $3 to $5 for seats on the verandas along the route.
That short fellow lodged behind 2 6-footers will be able to get a good view of the royal procession when it passes. Thousands of periscopes, priced from 15 cents up, are on sale at London stores.
I have selected and trained a composite troupe to open and close the doors of the official Royal Tour automobiles at the railway station. We will also patrol and keep school children from crowding on the road, especially previous to the procession. The Scout spirit will be maintained at all times in dealing with the public. It's a tough proposition, fellows. It's up to us to show London citizens and visitors that London Scouts can do it. Scoutmaster Harold Moten.
Hours before the royal procession will start, the district is packed with a mass of cheering humanity. The city's population has more than tripled in the past few hours to an estimated 300,000. making this London's largest parade crowd of all time. Despite the addition of 33 extra trains, both railways are having to rent trucks to handle the overflow of visitors.